Development and building new product is a long, long runway, and you have to be prepared for things. And these are clearly extreme examples that are going to happen that are completely out of your control. So this was brought to us by our land developer team, 24 fourplexes. But if you're looking at it from the outside, it's an apartment complex. That's what it looks like to you. It was platted as fourplexes. It was like a 16-unit building. 4-story building, and on each side is 1 unit. So let's say you're the northeast corner of the building. Your fourplex is the first, second, third, and fourth floor of that building, and that's your fourplex.
Welcome to the Build to Rent podcast, the first ever real estate show dedicated exclusively to helping investors go from raw dirt to a cash flowing rental property. Whether you're looking to do a massive syndication or a one-off rental property, the Build to Rent podcast will help you get there. Our hosts, Steve Olson, Chase Levitt, and Sherida Zenger, bring together more than 4,000 properties of experience as they break down how to find and finance projects, make the most of market and tax strategies, and maximize the returns of a Build to Rent portfolio. This is the Build to Rent podcast. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to the Build to Rent show. Steve Olson here, along with Chase Levitt and Sherida Zenger. We are here after a long holiday. Happy New Year. Welcome back. New and improved. Guess what we got? We got a website. So you can check us out at the b2rshow.com, b2rshow.com. There are links to each of us there, so you can send us a message with thoughts and insults and suggestions, or anything else that you might want to send. We could send some weird stuff in our normal life. A lot of spam. Yeah. What we want to talk about today is something that we hope that everybody will find useful, which is just kind of going through a recent build to rent deal that we did together and how it unfolded and what some of the challenges were and obstacles along the way. And if you like what we had to say, you want to hear more about that kind of stuff, please leave some comments on the show site at b2rshow.com. Recently, we turned over the last unit in a project called Pine Ridge Farms, which is in Payson, Utah, right? And if you've ever driven on Interstate 15 in Utah, it's kind of the main freeway. It goes all the way from San Diego up to the Canadian border. It cuts right through the heart of the Salt Lake City metro. And this project is on the south side, almost as far as you can get on the south side of the Salt Lake City metro. We started working on it in January of 2020. And that's like, can we insert like a dun dun dun, Preston? Because we all know January 2020, things started to get a little bit weird, right? At first, we released this project. And by the way, this was like a fourplex deal. This is what we do together a lot of the time. So it was fourplexes. Wasn't it like 25 of them?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. 24. Because then we had the
little building on the side.
Yeah. But
so this was brought to us by our land developer team, and 24 fourplexes. But if you're looking at it from the outside, it's an apartment complex. That's what it looks like to you. But it was platted as fourplexes. So each building was supposed to be like a 16-unit building, 4-story building, and on each side is 1 unit. So let's say you're the northeast corner of the building. Your fourplex is the first, second, third, and fourth floor of that building, and that's your fourplex. So then we had an HOA that was responsible for the common area, the stairwells between the fourplexes, and then, of course, all the landscaping. What did we have amenities-wise planned on this project? You guys remember?
A pool, and then I think there's a little tot lot.
The clubhouse.
There's a clubhouse, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is that getting a gym?
I'm sure it is, because I know that's one thing that we specifically talked about that we need to make sure we put. So, and this was after that conversation. So I'm sure there's going to be something in there.
Yeah. So a small club, that clubhouse has got to be what? Do you think that's 1,800 square feet, 2,000 square feet, maybe something like that?
Probably right around there.
Yeah. And in there, you've got a leasing / HOA office, like a sitting area with a couch, kind of a gathering area. Some lockers and bathrooms, and then a small gym area couple of treadmills and maybe some weights going in there. Not anything crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was never intended to be anything crazy.
Yeah.
So we got this project, and let's kind of go through what happened since then. So we got it January 2020. Which one of you can you take me through kind of what happened over the next, say, 4 months? Because we had to go
talk
out
about price a little bit, or no?
Yeah, because we had to sell it to investors.
Yeah, so we had it listed at $699,900, and like you said, it's a vertical, so stacked fourplex. You have a unit on each level, main level, second, third, and fourth. So $699,900. This was January 2020.
Yeah.
Launched the project. Things were actually going pretty good.
Yeah.
For the first couple of weeks, first couple of months. I think we probably had at least. Did we get to half or a third?
I'm sure we were close to probably half of it reserved, because then people started going backwards once.
About half reserved, and then March. To me, it was March, maybe first or middle of March. COVID and 2020. We know what happened there, and I think that's where people started to get a little bit of hesitation. They started to pull back a little bit. Very foreign, didn't know what was going on, and so we started to see a pullback, and we saw reservations starting to withdraw or cancel.
So we had to get a whole list of people to reserve because they were going to get construction funds.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we build this thing. Our developer team comes up with the money to buy the land, do all the civil work, and get it ready, get it all the way to permit, right? And then individual investors come in and close on construction loans. Our construction company builds the fourplexes. So you're saying people dropping like flies. No longer a lot of investor interest.
Yeah. Maybe 1, 2, or 3 that stayed in there. We're still getting calls and people that were wanting to talk about it, but the interactions, the reservations and the interactions that we once had, they seem to dry up and get pretty cold, at least for, 1 to 2 months?
What were investors telling you when they called and said, hey, I'm out? What was
I think
the
they were
reasoning?
just unsure. They didn't know. Like, are you even going to be able to build this? What's going on? I think there was so much uncertainty going on at the time that people were like, what's going to happen with construction loans? Shockingly, though, the construction lenders were still okay and still okay to lend. Like, there was never pullback from them.
I was really worried about that.
Yeah. Like, none of them ever came to us and said, hey, actually, we're going to have to put this project on hold, right? Like, this isn't something we're going to do. But I think it was just more the uncertainty. And I think a lot of people lost a lot of money in the stock market.
Yeah.
And so I think people were panicking, saying, okay, where else, how can I come up with funds? And it's just the unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every other call I was getting was an investor.
Yeah.
Because you keep in mind, we had 4 other projects going in other areas at the time. And they were just dropping like crazy. You've got $1 million in your stock portfolio, and I think it was worth $750 over a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That was crazy. And I, like you said, I was really worried about the construction lenders turning tail and running.
Yeah.
Not wanting to loan construction money, and they were uncharacteristically steadfast. They didn't even blink.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't even a blip on their radar. They were like, okay, where's the next project? Let's get going. I mean, I remember we were still closing some construction loans with other projects during that time. And we were all a little shocked, like, when are they going to pull the plug and say, we're not going to do anymore? I mean, think of Idaho. We were closing some of that Laguna and Entrada stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
That they kept closing.
Yeah. So at the $699,900, I want to say we were offering a 6.5 cap. Isn't that where we were? Or am I wrong there?
It might have been a little higher than that.
So maybe
I think
more?
it was higher.
6, 7, maybe 7. But it was a good cap rate. The numbers were good. So I feel like the investors weren't pulling out because of the numbers. They liked the investment, and that's why they were calling us in the first place or making reservations. But the uncertainty and unknown is why they started to drop like flies.
There was a big conversation, that emerged at that time too, and it still comes up occasionally. Everyone's talking about, okay, so I don't know if I can buy this. I don't know where cap rates are going to go up to, right? And for the introductory listeners, saying cap rates are going up, that's a fancy way of saying prices are going down.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're all expecting this mass eviction event that was going to happen, or even worse, landlords can't evict tenants, yet they're not paying, so the rent rolls all tank, and you're full of you have a bunch of units full of tenants that aren't paying rent, which is the worst kind of tenant to have. And so now something that you would have sold for a 6% cap rate, you're going to have to sell for 8 now to get somebody to be willing to take the risk and bring it on. So everybody was thinking, if I wait, the deals are going to get better. So
and the deal did get a little bit better because we had to go to the builder.
Yeah.
And it was this whole collective thing where, I mean, obviously, we're real estate agents, so we make money off of commissions. We had to take a little haircut in our commission. The builder took a haircut on his profit. The development team took a haircut on their end, and we were able to kind of whittle that price down.
Yeah, well, we had to get it to a point because the market wasn't behaving rationally. Mm-mm. Right. You couldn't have a real conversation. There was just too much nonsense. And I think intuitively everybody knew at some point it would calm down a little. Right. But I mean, you got to think this is March, April of 2020. This was when it was the worst, at least here where we are in Utah.
And we owned the dirt. Like at that point, we owned that we were in the deal. We couldn't back out. There was nothing else we could do. So then it became the point of how do we not lose more money but still get some investors on board to follow through with this project, right? So
it's a good point because the clock was ticking. In this kind of business model, we use private capital to buy the dirt, to pay for all the civil work, acquisition, development money is what we call it, A&D money. And we owned it. And the clock was ticking on that interest. And it's expensive interest, by the way. This isn't like bank rates. We're talking in some cases double-digit interest rates. Mm-hmm. And so you've got millions of dollars ticking away at double-digit interest rates. We weren't really in a position where we could sit around and let the market figure itself out. We didn't have that luxury because when it was going to do that was such an unknown.
Yeah.
So the question was, what price can an investor not ignore? And this was the only time we've ever done this. And I hope it's the only time we ever do it. And I think we went from $699 down to what, $649?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, these are 1,050 square foot units. So you're getting over 4,000 square feet of rentable space. And at that price, even in all the chaos and in the mayhem, people started waking up, didn't they?
We got their attention.
Got their attention. Not all the way, because what was funny, would one of you take us through? Because we went from no one will talk to us to we lowered the price and some people started talking to us. I can still see the spreadsheet. We track everything on this spreadsheet. We've got each lot number, the investor's name next to it. We always feel very, very good when we have at least 75% of that taken up with committed investors. So we went from only a few hanging around to maybe 30, 40%. And then all of a sudden people were mad that we didn't have anything left because a few things broke our direction. Can one of you handle that and take us through that?
So I think we had a third when we dropped the prices, or that first section of 8? Mm-hmm. So the first 2 buildings were reserved. And so it was the I guess the other 2/3 took a little bit longer. And I think I want to say it was the middle of May when things started to turn a little bit. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns, but I feel like people just said, you know what, I need to invest my money, need to put it somewhere. And we started to get those calls again. All of a sudden the second batch and then the third batch. And yeah, we were all reserved and filled up within probably about 2 to 3 months after that April period.
Well, psychologically, yeah. I think the quote unquote lockdown in Utah, whatever that meant.
Yeah. Was that
expired
April?
on May 1st.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember because I listed my personal residence for sale on May 1st. And then it was so weird to see people just go, okay, it's okay now.
Yeah.
It's like
May
the
1st.
faucet changed. It was like, okay, I'm going to turn it back on because I need to do something. I can't just keep sitting here.
Yeah.
I think people were bored and thinking, well, there's still deals going on. I mean, everything didn't completely shut down. The world
and I think the
kept
stock
going.
market had started to recover by that
Trickle
point.
up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was clear that it had bottomed out. But what else happened? So there were 2 other things that were announced that all of a sudden took us from being, hey, this might be some kind of hillbilly project clear on the south side of the metro that nobody wants to live at, to all of a sudden definitely not that.
So Payson is about 12 minutes from Provo, the main Provo exit. Excuse me. And they announced a track station, so our mass transit that takes you from, which will now be Payson, clear up to Ogden, I think. Does it go up to Ogden? I think it goes up to Ogden.
And I think it's going to even go further up to Brigham City too at some point.
So they announced that they're going to continue those tracks down further, which was huge for us. And then another school that is located in Orem called Utah Valley University, UVU, announced that they were going to have a satellite location.
Like two blocks away?
Yeah, it's like off the exit to the right. Like it's just a couple minutes away. And the track station is a couple minutes away. Like it's right off that exit by that bowling alley.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be right
by
there.
minutes, not in a car.
No, by walking
on your feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Payson's kind of on the edge of Utah County, right south of Salt Lake County. And so it's on the south end. And so when those two announcements came out, that I think that triggered some people where it's like, yeah, that's kind of where things are starting to head or trend. Mm-hmm. So it ended up being a huge home run.
And the world's not ending. And so then all of a sudden, didn't we jack prices to $720? Something like that.
That was Blackstone.
Okay, there was another project that ran sort of parallel to this, but I think we did go back up to $699 or so on the last bit of that. We could check, but
yeah,
that thing evaporated, and then people that would not return your call in April were mad at you in May for well, why didn't you tell me? We could look at my call history and you might think I was a stalker. I called you so many times, right?
Yeah.
And so it can flip on a dime. I think the moral of the story is here, development and building new product is a long, long runway. And you have to be prepared for things, and these are clearly extreme examples that are going to happen that are completely out of your control. And I think for every good one, there's a bad one, and so on and so forth. But if you got in right, they say you make your money when you buy, right?
Well, and this one was an interesting one because we were dealing with the unknown of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of it, these are completed and we're getting a little more in rent than we thought. But then we've had 2 of them resell already at kind of the top of the market. So it's kind of this weird thing. And so when people are like, oh, what was the equity spread there? It's an astronomical number. And so I have to tell people, but that's not typically what we see. Our investors usually see 100 to 150,000 in equity upon completion, right? Now they were seeing insane amounts.
So we were projecting when we started the $699, $900, and then we had the market value of, was it 800 or 850?
I thought we had 850.
So 850. So that was a pretty dang good spread. And then like what you're talking about, we just resold one a couple months ago for $1,050,000.
Yeah. Well, because clients come in, they got a construction loan 2 years ago or whatever. They waited for all the development and the building to happen and the lease up, and they sat there for a while and they said, I wonder what it would look like if I sold this, right? It's just a small version of a value add is really what it is. But it's crazy, the fourplexes sell for more, I think, per door because somebody can use that conventional Fannie Mae money to buy them. So a leased up fourplex is viewed as a very secure source of income. The construction on that, I think, for the most part, went smoothly, except for our pool. Anyone want to take the pool?
Well, is it a pool?
It just ended up being quite a bit smaller than what we're anticipating or expecting. Overall, when I look at the videos or go over there, it's a great project. Colors look great. It looks clean.
It does look
little,
good.
Yeah, nice little clubhouse. Grass areas, landscaping looks good, and it's even pretty close to the I-15, the freeway. And so when it came to lease up, that didn't matter. Like, it filled up fast.
Put a sign out there and 100,000 cars a day. Or more, probably way more than that down there. Yeah, go past it. But, you ask yourself, like, how does your pool end up way smaller than you expected? We don't have a great answer for you on that, but it can happen. You can get miscommunications between your builder, your civil guys, and you got to just kind of muscle through it and work it out. It hasn't turned out to be a problem at all on the lease up, but it's going to be a weird small pool that we just have to deal with.
A glorified hot tub, as Chase said.
Yeah.
But
it's
you
not
have to look
hot.
at it. Hey, there's some amenities. There's other units down in that area, right, that don't have an amenity like that. Even look at our Provo project. We don't have amenities
we don't
in there.
have anything.
There's not a clubhouse or anything. So I think, 10, 12-minute difference in drive time for a location. We have great amenities there.
Yeah.
That I think that's what's going to draw and continue to draw a tenant to that location.
I remember analyzing it too, because we were comparing it to some other locations in in South Provo, and looking at a map or taking a client there, it looked like it was just so far away. But the funny thing about it is it takes you a grand total of like 2 minutes to be on the freeway from this project. And then you're like 7 to 10 to get off and get it to all the major retail by Utah Valley University and Provo and everything. And so some of this other inventory that we were worried about as competition in South Provo actually takes longer to get to the major retail because it's located so deep within the city. You've only got surface streets, whereas this one, bam, freeway, and you're there. So these are all intangible things to think about. So here we sit. All the units are occupied, I believe.
Yep.
Construction on the units themselves is done. The covered parking is getting installed on the front rows. We're putting in covered parking there. And I think they're mopping up a few details on some of their. We did some for rent garages, detached garages that tenants can rent from the HOA. I think it's been one of the more successful projects we've done. We know this when we hear from investors, right? If they're having a hard time, we're going to hear about it and we help them with it. I don't think I've had a peep other than, hey, when are you doing this again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had anyone reach out saying, hey, I'm having problems with this or with that. And that's how we like it.
And I guess I can go back just a little bit and speak from a personal investor standpoint at the $699 $900 when we first started selling that. I liked it, and that's why I was selling it. I was talking to investors. I didn't jump in at that time. And then COVID hit, pandemic, and then it dropped the price. I saw the cap rate and cash flow even get a little bit better. And then that's when, at that time, I was doing some other investing through FIG. Had a couple of units reserved in Provo, and so I was just spread out, didn't have a ton of capital. And so I said, hey, Pops, Dad, you want to jump in on this? And so we went 50-50 on a fourplex there, and it ended up being a home run. So just from a personal investor standpoint, it was definitely a good one. Very happy about it.
I mean, that shows that we like our inventory and our product because all three of us invest in our own projects, which I think speaks volumes.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, this was a good one. We have some projects that have been stinkers. And so we'll definitely talk about some of those on a future episode, what we did wrong and what we've since learned from that and how we're adjusting and so on. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to the Build to Rent show. Remember to subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out at b2rshow.com. Catch you next week.
Right on.
Thanks for listening to the Build to Rent podcast. You are now just a few clicks away from joining our community of Build to Rent investors. All you have to do is follow our show on Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also watch this episode and more by subscribing to the Build to Rent podcast on YouTube. The information presented in this podcast is general in nature. Nothing in this presentation should be construed as financial advice or recommendations for any particular situation. The hosts are only licensed to provide advice and services in the states where they are specifically licensed, and listeners should seek the advice from an appropriately licensed professional in the area where they invest. The examples presented in this presentation are for illustration only, and no guarantee that similar results can be achieved, since the facts, circumstances, and participants are all different.